Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for joining me here at Bible Book Club. Let's go ahead and jump right in. This is going to be interesting. I've kind of prepared. I read over some of the stuff again, and it's interesting. So, looking forward to getting it out there and hopefully hearing what some of you might think in terms of responses to the interpretations of this. So we left off last night, I believe, at the Tower of Babel, or Babel, however you pronounce it, Genesis chapter 10. So looking at Genesis chapter 10, we see it's another one of the generations of Noah. So basically, excuse me, we're coming right off of the flood here. We're coming out of the great flood where obviously Noah's Ark and the animals survive. So this was God's chosen guy, Noah. He was the one to be selected to carry on humanity into the future. So Genesis chapter 10 goes into detail about all of Noah's lineage, the sons of Noah. So it's all of chapter 10. So then we get into chapter 11 here. Genesis chapter 11. This is where we're getting into the tower. And so here's the thing. Just thinking about this logically before we're even going to read this. Noah's the only survivor. His sons and his family and his progeny are the only humanity on earth. So they're supposed to be God's chosen. These were supposed to be good people. God chose Noah, Noah's family. Like, this is who reseeded the earth. So here we go. And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass as they journeyed from east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar. And they dwelt there. And they said to one another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. So basically, it's just people coming together, building a tower, building something. We don't know what that is, a building or whatever it might be, and they don't want to be scattered abroad. They want to come together and be a people. And these are all Noah's sons, so this should be okay. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men builded. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them which they have imagined to do. What does that mean? Go to, let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad, and thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. So God comes down and confounds their language. Why? Why? What's the problem here? It's just another one of those non-making sense things that it doesn't make any sense. So let's see. Yeah, everybody's coming together for a common purpose. God came down and messed up the language so they couldn't communicate anymore. So looks like we're done with 11. Going to Genesis chapter 12. Here we go. Genesis 12:6. So this is about Abraham and Abram at this point. I'm sorry. Let's see here. Genesis 12:6. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh, and the Canaanite was then in the land. So here we go again. We've got the descendants of Noah, the only people. Now all of a sudden we got Canaanites in the land. We're going to see pharaohs. We're going to see. So I assume all these people, the pharaohs of Egypt, they're Noah's progeny. They must be. That's the only logical conclusion I can come up with. Let's see. 12:6. Yeah, who are the Canaanites? Where did they come from? All of a sudden we have pharaohs, princes, Egyptians. Where did they all come from? All right, here we get into the good stuff. And this is the good stuff, but the bad stuff. So Genesis chapter 12, 13-ish. We see we're introduced to Abram. He's got his wife Sarah, and so Abram lies to Pharaoh about Sarah. He tells Pharaoh and all of Pharaoh's men and all this stuff that it's not his wife, that Sarah is not truly his wife, but that Sarah is his sister. He makes the excuse because she's so pretty, that she's so good looking that everyone would probably kill me if they knew that I was married to her. So best to lie and say that she's my sister. Lies, cowardice, unbelief in God. God already told him that he's going to make a pact, or what's the word? God already came to Abram and said, "You will be the descendants of king." Basically told him that he's going to get a lot of progeny down the line. So that can't happen if he's dead. So he's lacking faith in God as well, it appears. So then we see Abraham leaving Egypt. So, and this is Genesis chapter 13. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, unto the south. And Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and in gold. So, this is my interpretation of it. So all of a sudden, Pharaoh is sleeping with Sarah. He's getting riches. He didn't have all this stuff when he came to Egypt. So he's leaving with gold and all this cattle and booty. And it seems like he may have prostituted his wife. We will then further see down the line that this happens again, and you kind of put two and two together and say, all right, well, at the very least, he's lying, he's being cowardly, and he's disbelieving in his in his God. So let's see here. I'm going to go back to 12. I'm going to go back to Genesis chapter 12 here because this is a very important point. Let's see, where are we? Yeah, the Lord plagues Pharaoh and his family because of Pharaoh and Sarah's relationship. So even though Pharaoh didn't know, he's like, what? And he comes over to Abram at this point and says, why did you, confronts him, why did you lie? Why would you do this to me? Why would you curse my family? It's right around Genesis chapter 12, 13 through 20 in that area where Pharaoh is basically talking to Abram like, bro, you lied. What's up with this? Now my family's cursed. Your God is, get out. Like, he's like, I've had enough of you, Abram. Leave us. Now your God has cursed us for some reason because you lied to us. So it doesn't make sense. And I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The more I'm getting into this is just backwards, man. So let's go to Genesis 13:4. He goes back to an old campsite. Okay. So, yeah, unto the place of the altar which he had made there at the first, and there Abram called on the name of the Lord. So they go back to old altars. That to me strikes of occultism and ritualism. Perhaps when they would go back to these places to call to God, what were they doing? Were they having to do particular rituals to invoke this? It's what it sounds like to me. To going back to an old place where you invoke God before. We see this throughout the Bible. Particular places of worship or particular places of sacrifice, and certain criteria have to be met to appease the Lord. So let's see. Abram. Yeah, this seems like ritual summoning to me. That's just my opinion of what it sounds like. So Genesis 16. Let's go ahead. So we're going to skip 14, 15, going now to Genesis 16. Very big moment. So here is our introduction to Ishmael. So in case those of you that did not know, Abraham had two sons. Abraham too had, a wife, Sarah, and a concubine, I believe it was Hagar, and a concubine. Sarah has Isaac. The concubine has Ishmael. So Ishmael is the father of, essentially what happens is Ishmael goes on, they go separate ways. Ishmael goes this way and becomes the father of Islam. And Isaac branches out, and his progeny are Christianity. So Abram's two children from two different wives. In the Islamic faith, it's Ishmael that is the legitimate son. So they basically just have the opposite of what we are taught. So this is the introduction in Genesis chapter 16. Introduction to Ishmael, a son of Hagar, Abram's concubine. This is the infamous Abrahamic split of Islam and Judaism/Christianity. Let's see here. And it says in description of Ishmael in Genesis chapter 16, excuse me, Ishmael will be a wild man, and his hand will be against everyone, and everyone against him. Is that prophetic or what? I mean, that's the father of the Islamic faith. What we're talking about, that quote. Let's read it again, because I think it's very important. He will be a wild man, and his hand will be against everyone. He's going to fight everyone, and everyone's going to fight him. Very prophetic. You can go deeply into this, and this is a completely tangent topic, which I tend to do sometimes. But you can go off and look at Albert Pike, the quote of Albert Pike in the Illuminati, where they predicted, apparently, in Albert Pike's letter to Giuseppe Mazzini. This was in like the 1800s. Basically, they predicted the three major world wars, and the third world war is going to be Zionists versus Islam. So basically, the Jewish state of Israel versus Islam. Whether it will come to pass, it sure seems like it, but it's been seeming like it for thousands of years, conceivably. Is there all this Bible prophecy? Is that, there's so many questions that you can get into with this. That's why it's so fun. Okay, so here's what I found interesting, just a side note. Earlier in the chapter, Sarah is permitted to beat Hagar for giving her basically a dirty look. It's somewhat indescript, and my apologies, I can't find this. I don't have the specific verse number here, but I knew it's Genesis chapter 16, somewhere in there, given the ability to, she's allowed to hit Hagar just because Sarah interprets a certain look a certain way. So that's just, culture, I guess, being allowed to, hitting people in general is just not cool, man. This aggression will not stand, man, as the dude once said. So, all right, I want to push on just because this is important. Let's see. All right, so we're going to finish off with this, and this is the end of my first page of notes. It seems like a good, I don't want to run on for half an hour. I could go for, long time talking about this stuff. It's so fun. So I have in my notes to read aloud Genesis chapter 17, verses 1 through 9. So here we go. And when Abram was 90 years old and 9, the Lord appeared to Abram and said unto him, I am the Almighty God. Walk before me and be thou perfect. And I will make my covenant between me and thee, and will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell on his face, and God talked with him, saying, As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for the father of many nations have I made thee. And I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a God unto thee, and to thy seed after thee. And I will give unto thee, and to thy seed after thee, the land wherein thou art a stranger, all the land of Canaan, with an everlasting possession, and I will be their God. So, that's strong. That's strong. And in my ignorance, I must apologize. The land of Canaan, I'll have to look this up. Let's look this up right now. Where is the biblical land of Canaan? My 2 cents, my best, I would be willing to wager, it's Israel. Where is the biblical Canaan? Canaan was the name of a large and prosperous country, at times independent and others a tributary to Egypt, which corresponds roughly to present-day Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, and Israel, and was also known as Phoenicia. Interesting. Why we never hear about the Phoenicians in general, man. See, the history is just so, it's amazing. We haven't been told, I don't think, any of it, and the stuff that we have been told, it's coming from these sources that they wrote, like, you know. So anyway, so that's my interpretation of this, and this is the Zionist pledge of today. You know, this is retaking of Israel. This has been planned out for apparently thousands of years because God decreed it. And I will give unto thee and to thy seed after thee the land wherein thou art a stranger. So that's that's the argument can be made that it was Palestinian land. It was other Canaanites' land. It was never what we will later, I think, find to be this tyrannical God being that, here, this is yours now. You're chosen because I said so. So there you go. And actually it says to go read 9. So, and God said unto Abraham, thou shalt keep my covenant, therefore thou and thy seed after thee in their generations. I got to read this, and I'll probably come back to this next video because I believe I might have it highlighted because it's so preposterous. But Genesis chapter 17. So I just read Genesis 17 verses 1 through 9. Here's Genesis 17, 14. And this is the God this is who we're supposed to bow down to as those of the Abrahamic faith. This is our God saying this. And the circumcised man child, whose flesh of his foreskin is not circumcised, that soul shall be cut off from his people. He hath broken my covenant. So he just creates this covenant now. Penis chopping off, dick chopping off, or circumcision, you can call it. And the uncircumcised man child, what's that mean, a man child? Basically, adults. We're going to come see later, the circumcision thing gets a little out of control, and frankly, I have difficulty even kind of talking about one of these parts. It's so horrific. It just makes me, as a man, ugh. So this is our God. This is our God that we're dealing with here. I apologize. I'm getting a little emotional. So I believe it perhaps best to end the video now. Thank you so much for continuing on with me. We're leaving off right around Genesis chapter 17, 18. We will finish off there. We will come back there tomorrow. So thank you all very much. And remember, there are a lot of unhappy people out there. Do your best to not be one of them, and do your best to uplift and maybe turn someone's day around for the better if you can. At least turn your own day around as best you can, and be positive, be happy. Thank you all and have a great day.